After winning 3 World Rapid Championships, Magnus Carlsen was about to win his 4th, having defeated Alireza Firouzja and Krysztof Duda in the semi-finals and being placed number 1 at the tournament with a score of 7.5 out of 9. However, there was a young prodigy who was also dominating the tournament, Abdusattorov Nodirbek, a 17-year-old prodigy who had already beaten grandmasters such as Fabiano Caruana, and next up he was facing Magnus Carlsen. With momentum behind each of them, both players were extremely confident as they shook hands. Nodirbek opens the game with white pawn c4. Magnus responds with knight f6. The white knight jumps to c3 and the black pawn moves to e5. After the other knight's move, the game turns into the 4-knight variation of the English opening. The white pawn on e2 advances to e4. The black bishop slides over to b4. A few pawns are moved, and the black bishop goes to c5. Magnus had an opportunity to capture the knight on c3, but instead chose to save his piece. The b2 pawn moves to b4, which kicks the black bishop out of b6. The white knight moves over to a4. This basically forces Magnus to give up his trapped bishop. The other black bishop slides over to g4. The white knight captures the b6 square. Magnus's pawn captures the knight and the white bishop moves to b2. Magnus creates a trade after capturing the knight on f3. This leads to the black knight shifting to d7. Magnus already has no bishops left. Nodirbek's pawn advances to g3. This opens a lane for the white bishop to develop. The black queen moves to f6. Magnus is offering a queen trade, but Nodirbek declines by moving his own queen to d1. After a few pieces develop, Nodirbek castles. Magnus begins to attack the right side of the board with his g7 pawn. The white bishop moves to h3, which puts pressure on the e6 knight. Despite this, Magnus continues his attack with pawn to h5. This creates another trade after the bishop captures on e6. Nodirbek's pawn moves to b5, which kicks the black knight out to b8. The two players develop their pieces until Magnus's queen goes to h7. The white queen slides over to h3. This is a brilliant move because it prevents the d7 knight from developing. Magnus responds to this by pushing his rook to g7. This creates a rook trade and ends with the white queen capturing a pawn on h4. Magnus's knight jumps over to c5 while the white bishop goes to c1. A trade of pawns occurs and the white queen moves to h3. A few pieces are shuffled until Nodirbek offers Magnus a queen trade. He declines, moving his queen to g8. This creates another pawn trade, ending with the white king moving to e2. Magnus's king shifts over to b5 while the white bishop slides to e3. The black queen checks and the white bishop blocks. The black king moves to a4 to attack the a3 pawn. Nodirbek's pawn advances forward and more pawns are exchanged. The white queen slides to f3, creating another opportunity for a queen trade. Magnus declines again by moving his queen to g6. Nodirbek advances his pawn to h5, which kicks the black queen to e8. The white bishop moves to e3. Magnus decides to advance his pawn instead of capturing on h5. The h5 pawn advances forward, which is dangerous for Magnus. It has a completely open lane towards promotion. The black queen slides down to e5 while the white king goes to f1. After a couple of moves, Magnus forces a bishop-knight trade. Nodirbek pushes his queen over to c6, which leads to Magnus's king capturing the a3 pawn. After a few checks and shuffled pieces, the h6 pawn advances to h7. It is only one space away from being promoted to a queen. Magnus is forced to move his queen in order to prevent this. The white king moves over to g4 and Magnus gives up his pawn. The black queen begins to check the white king over and over again, trying to prevent the h7 pawn from promoting. Eventually, Nodirbek moves his king to c5. Magnus decides to advance his pawn forward, but it ends up costing him the game. The white queen checks and Magnus resigns only moments later. The two players shake hands and Nodirbek goes on to win the entire tournament.